The opinions expressed in the following program are provided for general information purposes only and should not be construed as advice from CJAD 800 or Bell Media. The following is sponsored content.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Montreal, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, and in for Josh Miller today is Michael Newton of FL. Welcome back, Michael.
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Josh will be back soon, and this evening we're actually going to do something we've never done before. I'm really excited about tonight's topic. We have never profiled an entrepreneur who owns a professional sports franchise. We tried to get the Molsons, but they didn't come. Kidding. We'll have John Struthers from the Montreal East Rangers Junior AAA hockey team. I have so many questions for John about what his fascinating business must be like, but we'll get to John in a few minutes.
I have a funny feeling I'm not going to get a word in edgewise next to your questions.
Patrick Sullivan will also be along, FL trustee, on talking about asset-based financing. That's all on the way this evening. But first, as usual, entrepreneurial news and notes. And let's begin with this study. Interesting one, looking at CEOs and their attitudes going into this new year, particularly on stuff like artificial intelligence and also confidence. This was one of the findings from this survey from Markham Hofstra. And confidence is where we'll start this evening. Are leaders of businesses confident heading into 2020?
Yeah, so the numbers are still actually quite high. They are down in Q1 of 2020 from Q4 of 2019. The numbers are still, though, very favorable. What we're starting to see is a little bit of concern. This is mostly in the mid-market CEO range. But investment is still quite high, projected for the rest of this year in technology, in equipment, and most importantly, I guess, in the ever-elusive talent war.
So why do you think it's breaking down that way? Do you think that is it the Trump's presidency that's having sort of a supercharging effect on some multinationals?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the positive economic environment in the U.S. still continues to buzz along, though I think it's more sector-driven than it is a general statement. However, I think the investment numbers that you're seeing, technology, like I said, technology, equipment, and people, is something that is always going to be at the forefront of investment, regardless of whether business confidence is high. It's just a question of relativity.
In terms of artificial intelligence, that's also something that the report dug into a little bit. More of a wait-and-see attitude, it seems, based on the numbers.
Yeah, the AI side seems to be lagging a little bit in terms of the overall implementation of AI. I think this was a really big buzz 2, 3, 4 years ago. A lot of people figured within major industries that we would be seeing AI pervasive. At this point, is very particular use, and I think you're looking at, probably about, if my memory serves, somewhere around 50 or 56% of the firms that are actually considering using AI, and nobody is, very few have used it 100% implementation at this point.
The Markham Accounting Advisor Company asked CEOs, what is your view of the current business environment? And on a scale of 1 to 10, the most popular answer, with 27%, was actually 10. So highly, highly favorable, which goes against what we're seeing in news media a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's always been a disconnect, I think, between leading sectors and general economic environment and confidence. There are a lot of people that are still very positive what's going on. I mean, I think if you wait and see what happens over the next few days or weeks with the impeachment trial, you may get a different feel going forward. But as it is right now, it's still seem full steam ahead. I mean, whether that's, remember, these are talking about the next few quarters. We're not talking about the next few years here.
And when it comes to all of the factors that influence what CEOs are going to do in the next year, if they had to choose number one, that number one was talent for 2020.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
All right, so let's move on from that. And another survey on the employee side. This is from Inside Public Accounting that suggests that culture is really one of the increasingly huge and essential components to any HR plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened now is the corporate culture environment is starting to displace the EI, or the emotional intelligence component of what we've seen as the buzz in the media. There is a very strong push to build on culture, which, some people think culture is it a fun place to work, but really it's a combination of a number of factors, and culture continues to be a very hot topic. Funny enough, the difference between the culture so if you look at professional firms, the culture conception of owners versus staff is very different. The owners have a much higher sense of how positive their culture is than a lot of their employees do.
Some of the factors that influence culture, I'll read off a bunch of them if you have any thoughts. Agility, alignment, collaboration.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the younger in the millennial group environment working in these areas, what are you looking at? You're looking at people that want to work together. They want to work for the greater good. They want to have an environment that is conducive to making a difference in the world. So they want to, that's their philosophical approach to life. So obviously their business or their corporate world needs to mirror that in order for them to be truly happy.
Another one on the list is engagement. I had to do some research recently on something called presenteeism, which I wasn't really familiar with before. Absenteeism, we all know what it is, of course. Presenteeism is when you're present, but psychologically absent.
It's a little bit like when your wife looks at you and says, "Are you paying attention? Are you present in the conversation?" So, you can be at work but not necessarily being productive. And I think that engagement is probably the key one on there. And because the problem is everybody's concept of engagement, or what turns them on to go to work every day, is going to be different. So, in a professional environment, you're going to have a base intellectual level and stimulus need and everything else. But then once I get to peak performance, what may motivate you, Dan, is not the same thing that's going to motivate Patrick or John at the end of the day. And how do you build a corporate culture that envisions 50 or 100 different personalities to try and get a full engagement level?
So reward is actually listed on there as well in terms of developing a positive culture. How do you reward employees these days without being politically incorrect or getting into dicey waters?
Well, the interesting conversation we had the other day is when we were growing up, or the older generation, if you got, somebody gave you the prime parking spot by the front door with your name on it, that was kind of like, hey, wow, somebody has recognized the influence and the effort that you did. Try give them a parking spot now, and they're going to tell you that you're effing up the carbon footprint and everything else that comes with it. So, the reality is what's driving them is the important area is to make sure that you continue to focus on the needs and the desires of the staff, and not put in place what you and I would think they want, but rather what they want.
Work-life balance, that's a popular one in Quebec that's talked about a lot, the réconciliation travail-famille.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to an entrepreneur who needs to look out for that?
You've picked a topic that is probably the biggest thorn in my side. The term work-life balance, in my mind, is becoming something that represents why I don't want to do something as opposed to why I'm doing it. The reality and the concept, again, is generational. I think there's a very big difference between generations in terms of where they see their career and their commitment involved. This province by far the most challenging on a work-life balance because of the philosophical approach to the Quebec worker. And there is very, very difficult to find that firm balance. I mean, if you look at our organization, in the past year, we've gone to flex time, we have gone to telecommuting, we have gone to dress for your day, and a lot of these things ultimately are about trying to create a work-life balance that allows people to get in as much. The other issue you have is for a lot of that mid-range worker, they're the sandwich generation. They're dealing with their parents and with their kids, and trying to find some kind of balance where they're not taking one or the other group to the doctor or something is very imposing.
Lastly, this column from Inc.com, even if you love your logo, it still may be off-brand. Here's how to create a better design. We spoke about this a little last week when we had Kim Fuller of Phil, a branding agency, on the program, and we talked about how difficult and frustrating it is to come up with a good logo. I mean, it took me a quarter, basically, like 4 months to do it.
Yeah.
What have you had similar experiences?
Yeah, it's funny because the recommendation is the visceral recognition is half a second. A person goes to your website, and within half a second, they're going to decide whether they're staying or leaving your website. That's how quickly you have to grab them. So whether that is a brand, whether it's a vision of the website, and a lot of things that we have problems with are the consistency. So you have a website that may differ in vision and in look and feel from a print brand or a print logo, and the colors, and there are certain areas where, unfortunately, I think as professional firms, we think they're worth a lot more than they really are. At the end of the day, you've got to look at the business, you have to look at the environment, you have to look at whether that's going to be there. But certainly on the front page of a website, you got to catch them right away.
And also just have a message behind it. Even if it's not obvious, there should be a story behind your logo. And I think that's hugely important. Do a brainstorming session, throw out adjectives that you put on the chalkboard, and just make sure it's true to you.
And I also think you should be explaining that. It should be part of your website. You should explain why we chose that logo, what it means to us, where that emphasis is, or everybody in your organization should be able to say, hey, this is where we see things.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. Coming up next, we're going to speak to John Struthers, the owner of the Montreal East Rangers Junior AAA hockey team, our first professional sports franchise, profiled in the program tonight. So that's on the way.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Montreal, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar, and in for Josh Miller today is Michael Newton of FL. And first, we've never done a sports franchise before, Michael. This is exciting. John Struthers is here. He's the owner of the Montreal East Rangers Junior AAA hockey team. Welcome, John.
Gentlemen.
So the first question, Mike, you want to take it away? It's the easiest one of the night.
Well, I guess the first question I was going to is maybe correct our stance from before the commercial.
Yes.
At the end of the day, this is not a professional league. This is an amateur league, which the players are paid. The players are not paid. The coaches are paid. The staff is paid, but the players are not paid. And I think you can. We'll delve into that a little bit later, but. Give us where you come from, why, your history, your love of the sport. Did you play hockey in college? That type of feedback for us.
So I'm your typical, I guess, Montrealer, or typical Canadian for that matter. And I grew up playing the game. I was lucky enough to play junior hockey. I played briefly in this league, and I played in the which is now the OJHL, which is in Ontario, and I played college hockey in Division III. At SUNY Potsdam. I was a little short, a little bit fat, and a little bit slow, so things ended at that point.
We get along really well.
Yeah. So that was my reality.
Yeah.
And we, myself and two others, got involved with this organization 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and we've taken it from there.
So it's a profit-oriented business in theory. In practice, there's not a lot of money to be made. So what drives you to get involved? What is that? It's certainly not about lining your pockets with cash.
No, none whatsoever. We looked at it, when we sat down, my two businessmen, and we looked at the Jenny Cantini and Eric Raymond. We looked at this and we looked at the opportunity to develop something, an organization that at the end of the day, hockey has given to us, and we felt in the same manner that we can give back. Gianni's played Division I hockey at Brown University. He had an excellent hockey career. Eric is heavily involved in minor hockey in Montreal. He has hockey schools and so forth. And the three of us, we sat down and we looked at it and we said, okay, how can we participate and try to inch by inch make something a little bit more valuable and provide a better product and service for kids between the ages of 17 and 20.
So really this is about developing hockey players. It really is even though, like I said, it's profit oriented, it's kind of philanthropic at the end of the day in terms of trying to move this forward. You got a bunch of volunteers, you've got yourselves that aren't looking to make, you're really looking to try and move hockey forward in Quebec.
The goal at the end of the day is you've got to develop. You've got to. We're a step in the process. So our players will either, the younger players will go, hopefully go and maybe graduate and play in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. We have other players that will hopefully move on and go into NCAA Division I, Division II, Division III, or play U Sports, and then others that are lucky enough to play pro, be it in Europe or in the United States. But our goal is, we're one step in the process.
Walk me through the process of purchasing the franchise and then eventually your first day at work. I mean, you get into the workplace. What are you doing as an entrepreneur to get the house in order?
The three of us sat down. There was an opportunity with in Montreal East where there was a group that basically they laid the foundation. There was something there for us to work with and to build upon. They did an excellent job, and ultimately without them, we wouldn't have been able to really in the short time that we've been there, been able to take it even to today and to tomorrow and so forth. But we sat down and we said, look, what can we add between the three of us, each within a little, again, the cog in the wheel, so to speak. And we each looked at this and said, okay, you'll take this aspect, you take this aspect, and you take this aspect. And we looked at the organization, the structure, their community involvement, the participation within the city, and what, the structure of the rink, what was available to the players and so forth. And we felt, hey, there's an opportunity to build here. And that's kind of like in any business. What was the opportunity to grow this?
So this organization has been around 15 to 20 years, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. And you bought it a couple of years ago. So, the first question is going to be, how do you generate revenue? And where are you finding sources of revenue other than your bank account?
Jenny and I had lunch today, and it's a constant topic of discussion, and you have to be creative. Advertising revenue is critical for us. Our partners who buy advertising, be it on the boards at the rink or within our program, that's a source. Attendance is a source. And we with Eric, his guidance, we put together a hockey school, and we have a 2-week hockey school which we're looking at expanding to 4, where we do a showcase that showcases 15, 16-year-olds in and around that age group, for them to be recruited to junior hockey as well, be it our team or other teams across Canada and into the United States. So all these different elements come together that allow us to, at the end of the day, reduce whatever the red is, and slowly but surely try to keep and get into the black.
Talk to us maybe a bit about the arena. I mean, it's not you don't own the arena.
No,
You're
the city
owns it.
Yes, yeah.
How many people does it seat?
1,000, give or take. It's 1,000. So it's a city of Montreal East is a standalone city. The mayor is a super individual who he assists us, guides us, nudges us, and we ask a lot of questions, and we're fortunate enough that we have a facility there's a pool, there's multiple gyms, and we have a setup that a locker room with a training room and a coach's office and so forth that really is top notch and top tier that the city provides us with, and they just support us through this. And the most important thing, regardless if it's a sponsorship or whatever it is, they guide us to allow us to continue to make this work properly.
I think Quebec is a couple of years behind. If I look at Western Canada in terms of how they've developed their leagues, their facilities, I mean, you're talking about, weight rooms and all. I mean, this is stuff that maybe for Quebec hockey is relatively new, and having a full service arena environment where this has predominantly been the case out west for a number of years, even into Ontario.
No question.
We seem to be playing catch up, which may also be reflected a little bit in the Q, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, in terms of, the number of players that are feeding out compared to what used to.
In speaking, when we look at our facilities at the end of the day, and with social media, it's fantastic because you can get a true picture of what goes on in other organizations across the country, and you just look at some of these facilities in Western Canada, as you mentioned, or in the Ontario Hockey League. I mean, it's top notch, heavy duty. Weight rooms and so on and so forth. So, the student athlete, if that's the term, or the athlete is looking for what types of services and programs and facilities do you have that will lead me that will better my my ability on the ice and so on and so forth. So, that's what we're trying to emulate.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. We're joined by John Struthers, owner of the Montreal East Rangers Junior AAA hockey team. So we'll talk about HR, marketing, and more. Patrick Sullivan will be along, FL's trustee, on asset-based financing with some tips for you. On the way, today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Montreal, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Montreal's Michael Newton, in for Josh Miller tonight. And we're doing a first, actually. Tonight we're speaking with the owner of a hockey team, John Struthers, the owner of the Montreal East Rangers Junior AAA. And John, one thing that makes the news often when it comes to junior hockey is the customer service, or in this case, the parents, the fans in the stands can get unruly sometimes when their kids are involved. Have you had any interesting experiences in that respect? And how do you maintain, I guess, a peaceful, friendly atmosphere in your buildings?
Oh, yeah. Where do we start? No. You know what? We've been lucky that, for I can only speak for the last 2 years of the games that I've gone to, that, you have not so much in our rink, but certainly you hear different stories, and some of them are enjoyable, and some of them are a little bit less enjoyable. But you know what? The parents are engaged. The parents are they're more educated. And I don't even know if that's a right term to use, but they know more and more and more about the game and all the intricacies associated with it, that, they're following it from a multitude of different ways, as opposed to just what's going on in front of them, how their son is playing, how many shifts, all these different aspects that, take it to that forces us to stay on our toes and make sure that we're, at keeping it as easy and seamless as possible.
Well, you're dealing with 16 and 17-year-olds, so you're dealing with parents who have 18-year-olds. You're dealing with parents who still have high aspirations.
No question.
Whether that is, getting a full ride to go to university in the States to play hockey, whether it's a chance to play pro in Europe, or, the ultimate holy grail of playing in the NHL at a certain point in time. Maybe talk to us a little bit about the drafting process, how your team gets built, the effects of your team on the next level of recruitment and draft, and how that works its way through.
So our draft usually takes place a week or so after the Quebec Major Junior draft. And then we're one of two teams on the island of Montreal. The West Island Shamrocks are on the west side, and we're on the east side. So all of our teams have a small little territory, call it, and then we tend to choose people that are geographically within a geographic distance that it's easy for them to, we've got 2 practices a week, or 2 or 3 practices a week, and off ice training. So the student athlete is at the rink quite often. So part and parcel of it is we have a draft. They'll either make a decision to join our team, or they'll make a decision to go to the queue, or they'll go another route. And our challenge is specifically that is selling the product and selling the service and the value of what we have to offer on our team and within our league. And it's a competitive environment. You've got leagues in the U.S. that are the product is getting better and better. And you've got leagues in Canada that have solid programs, and we have a lot of work to do to prove and to sell the value of what we're providing, and the opportunity for that student athlete to go on, be, again, as you mentioned, be it down to the States or in youth sports or off to Europe to play professional hockey.
Used the term before, the parents are more educated. I think if you want to consider, most of the parents now have taken into account, where possible, what the options are for their kids next in line, and I think that might present itself to be a bit of a challenge at the end of the day.
Well, a parent, if your child is skating at 2 years old and playing, novice or mite or whatever it is at 5, 6, the parent has invested an enormous amount of time and money and so forth, and made commitments that, over the 10, 15 years that their son or daughter, for that matter, has played hockey. The parent understands, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what we're looking for our child going forward. So they're aware of all the different avenues that are available to their kids, let alone ours.
Do you have the ability to trade?
We do.
You do? Okay.
That's Gianni and his team. I stay away from the locker room. I stay away from hockey decisions, and I think that's what allows our organization to work well. I'm fortunate enough that we're surrounded by good people who know what they're doing. And again, hockey today is dramatically different than where it was, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I played 20 years ago. I just don't understand the game in the same manner as what it is. What you see on TV is a lot different than what goes on, behind the scenes.
One quick thing on competition. By which metrics do you personally judge yourself against the competition besides the win-loss record?
It's, we look at, if we look at it from a business perspective, because win-loss, and again, what goes on, their metrics from a hockey perspective, are detailed, and the tools that they have available to them, it's incredible what they're analyzing after the game and prior to the game. And I think it's just going to continue to evolve at our level. And obviously at the higher levels in professional hockey, it's just incredible, the analytics and so forth. We look at ourselves from a business perspective. Attendance is critical. How we're reaching the community and the message that we're trying to get across and how well that's being received. And at the end of the day, the more we're communicating and the more that we're involved within the community, a greater number of people are going to attend to the games. So it's a critical aspect of what we do. Communication. Followers on social media, as crazy as it is, it's critical in what we do.
I think the evolution of hockey, as with most major sports in North America, I don't even think we can keep up with that evolution as to how far it's gone. And I grew up playing minor hockey, and, it was friends and family. It was, you never had the audience. The opportunity to go on was limited to a few people at the end of the day. You look at what it takes now to run a major league franchise. And that kind of, I guess, the trickle-down effect as it finds itself into a very competitive and highly regulated for the players and everything is changed dramatically since, we grew up playing sports.
No question. We have a sports psychologist. We have a nutritionist. We have a variety of different resources available to us that we're providing that years ago it was unheard of.
Yeah, we had a nutritionist too. They picked up the orange tang from the casse-croûtes and brought it to the room after. That was a nutritionist. It was
2 hot dogs for me with mustard and ketchup, please.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaking of HR, though, what are your priorities when it comes to HR? We've spoken with franchise owners on the program who have a lot of young employees. Really, sure. High turnover, that's a factor. What are things that are on your radar?
We look for engagement. We look for people who are associated and want to be associated with our organization, and want to be engaged, who bring different types of ideas to the table and ask a lot of questions and question what we're doing at the end of the day. We just don't have all the answers, and we never will have all the answers. And we're constantly asking questions on, are we doing this right? Is this the right way of doing things? Or what do we have to change? And we're looking at different organizations and what they're doing. And we ask, the people that are associated with our team to make us better, because it's like in any business. If they don't, then we never will.
Right. It's the battle for talent at the end of the day. No question. And you see that trickle down effect. We were talking earlier about the dollars associated with the acquisition price of a franchise, and you were saying that junior hockey franchises out west are going for over $1 million. You wouldn't think that is anywhere close. You look at even in the queue, some of the valuations, $5 to $10 million for a franchise, and you think, well, this is just minor hockey to a certain degree.
It's franchises have a staff of I would assume in the queue 10, 15 people from a variety of different functions, where they'll have full-time a full-time staff, similar to the Alouettes, yeah. Similar to other sport franchises. And that's what it is. They're battling for every dollar. And when you look at specifically in I don't know if it's the BCHL, these are well-run, well-managed organizations that, in speaking for Montreal East, we have a lot of catching up to do, and we're learning. Mm-hmm. We're learning and improving our product and how we go to market and go to, at the end of the day, go to market. It's the product on the ice, but it's all the periphery that goes along with it.
Yeah. I think for the longest time, people thought, well, you bought a sports franchise if you had money burning a hole in your pocket, and you never really looked at it as a business. But if you look at like we said, the dollars involved in anywhere from, an NHL franchise to all the way down to some of the juniors, you have to look at it like a business. You can't, just say, hey, I'm going to jump into this and go lightly.
we have an operating budget. We analyze that operating budget. We review the operating budget on a regular basis. It's cash flow management. It's payables and receivables. I mean, it's the whole 9 yards. And, it'll creep up on you if you're not in line with managing your business. And regardless of what goes on the ice, we win or lose, our payables still come due.
Right.
So, I mean, it just doesn't change.
John Struthers with us, owner of the Montreal East Rangers junior AAA hockey team. Will have his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur coming up a little later. But first, Patrick Sullivan up next. He's a trustee at FL on asset-based financing and some tips if you want to finance your business. That's on the way.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Today's entrepreneur on CJAD 800, Dan Delmar and Michael Newton in for Josh Miller tonight. We're joined by John Struthers, owner of the Montreal East Junior Rangers AAA hockey team. We'll have his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur coming up. But first, Patrick Sullivan is back, FL trustee. Talk about financing. Welcome back, Patrick.
Good to be here.
Gentlemen, before we start, I have a joke for you guys. A millennial walks into a bank and asks for a loan. The loan officer says, "What are your assets?" That's the joke. That's it.
Okay.
We don't have any assets.
They're in
as a
the
generation, is
the
point.
parents' name.
Well, you're not going to be able to get an asset-based financing deal with no assets because the word is out there. It's asset-based financing. So basically, what I wanted to bring up tonight is for entrepreneurs, it is a product called asset-based financing, obviously, which is basically accessible to companies that are going through two different realms, either rapid growth or a serious cash crunch. Now, it's called asset-based financing. What does that all mean? It's based on assets, accounts receivable, inventory, equipment. The difference between traditional financing and the ABL side of things is that you have a lot more flexibility. Normally, on traditional banking, you will be providing your banker 21 days after month end with your borrowing base, and that will be the basis for the coming month. In ABL, the biggest advantage is that you can do that weekly. So, for example, a rapid growing company which needs the cash flow because it just signed a big deal, there's going to be substantial receivables. They can easily sell Friday for $1 million of goods and get a receivable at 85% the following Monday, which is deposited in the bank account. That's the flexibility that asset-based financing provides for. Either a company with rapid growth where management doesn't want to dilute itself or find a partner that'll kick in the cash to sustain the growth, that's a hell of a good product. It's not really addressed to small companies, though, and we'll get to that. Traditional financing versus ABL, that's probably the mainstream of it, where you will probably get more money on your inventory, you will get more money on your receivables in terms of financing, and it's a lot more flexible. They'll do deals where traditional banking will not do. The other great aspect about ABL is that ratios don't come into play, which helps companies that are either very cash tight, where, banks will look at ratios and say, oh, no, you're not at your level here and you're not at your level there, so therefore you're going to have to kick in some money. ABL doesn't care about ratios. They look at assets. And that's the biggest advantage. Downside, because there are downside, smaller corporations, I always said a deal under $1 million, forget ABL. You're looking at deals that probably start at $1 million up to hundreds of millions of dollars. The costs related to asset-based financing are considerably higher than in traditional banking. You're going to need external consultants that will come in, review the receivables, review what we call the borrowing base to make sure that you're not piping the dices and trying to get financing where you should. So it's monitored. There's inventory evaluators that will come in. And another cost related is just putting the thing together. The legal costs are considerable also.
The interest rates associated with it themselves are not that much higher. There used to be a bigger gap, but your incremental costs associated with the professional fees or the monitoring costs do bring your interest rate effectiveness much higher.
Exactly. The bank fee per se is somewhat similar to traditional financing, but then when you add all the extra costs, that's where it kicks up.
So if things are going well, obviously you're in a larger business here. Is there any reason to do this, or you really have to be in a bit of a desperate situation?
No, actually, there are companies that, as I was saying, that are going through rapid growth. Management, shareholders don't want to dilute themselves, and they don't want to kick in the money. They have and it's a product that will enable that company to go through its growth, pick up the ratios in the process with the profits, obviously, and eventually go back to traditional banking. I've seen clients that went from loans of $2 million to $50 million that never wanted to come out of ABL because of the flexibility that the product gives them, as opposed to traditional banking.
And how common is default? And in some cases, do businesses, lose their most important piece of equipment in these deals?
Well, it's like any other company. If financial difficulties, the bank is going to realize on its security. Technically, a bank, when it gets to that level, it's the same thing in traditional financing. They'll call their loans and do whatever they have to do to recover their money. The advantage in ABL, though, there's somewhat of a protection for the shareholders on that level, because since the assets have been monitored closely, rarely do banks lose when if ever they have to pull the plug.
Do you see situations increasing in fraud environment than you would under traditional loans?
I would tend to say that you see less because of all that monitoring. Okay. I mean, field examiners, guys that go in to do reviews, they will go quarterly or semi-annually on the deal. Sometimes the bank will require that for the first 6 months, we go every month.
Right, and you guys are highly specialized in what you're doing. So when you walk in, you're not looking for fraud, but you kind of know where the loopholes are. You know where the problems lie.
We're gonna pick it up pretty quickly. So, and that's an environment that traditional banking, they don't have that. So when the economy is booming, fine, but things are starting to tighten up, and we're going to see a lot more ABL deals coming through the books.
Speaking of millennials, some of our only assets are largely digital. Is it more complicated to evaluate those digital assets than, say, pieces of heavy machinery?
Well, if you're talking equipment, you have to understand that asset-based financing is mostly on inventory and receivables. Equipment is part of a transaction which will enable to finalize a deal, but really the source is really receivables and inventory. That's the ongoing target. It's actually the moving target that provides you with that financing every week. So if you do sales, well, you have the inventory. So that's really the monitoring end of it, because a piece of equipment's a piece of equipment. It's not going away. Once it's evaluated, you know what it's worth in a liquidation content. So that's basically it.
So John's looking at me going, I got 20 hockey players, a set of jerseys, and some water bottles, and he wants to know how he can go to the bank and finance that.
I would strongly recommend you go and see a traditional banker and cross your fingers and maybe get ready to sign a personal guarantee on the deal.
$50 with our old logo.
Exactly. Yeah, the old logos were so much more. They're historical.
Patrick Sullivan, trustee at FL. Thanks so much, Patrick.
Pleasure.
And finally, John, we turn to you. John Struthers, owner of the Montreal East Rangers junior AAA hockey team. And we ask you for your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur.
Planning. Take your time, plan. A business plan has to be reworked, worked, reviewed, analyzed, ask questions, and really take your time and plan.
All right. Thanks very much. And Michael, you are back next week or not next? We'll see you soon.
I don't know. It's too early. It's still a week away. I don't plan that far ahead.
All right. Well, we'll see you all back here next Monday night at 7 p.m. And don't forget to go to today'sentrepreneur.org for over a decade worth of entrepreneur profiles from this program. And again, Monday night at 7 right here on CJAD. Thank you, Michael Newton. Have a good night.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thanks, John.
The opinions expressed in the preceding program were provided for general information purposes only and should not be construed as advice from CJAD 800 or Bell Media. The proceeding was sponsored content.